and graduated like 2 months ago, but it feels like 2 years ago because of the current events. And pretty much I worked on Spell Strike when I was in SIP, and currently I work as a contracted worker for Truly Social Games Vancouver on Archer Danger Phone as an artist.
Kate, you want to go? You want me to go?
There you go. Sure.
Okay.
Let's do it. Hi, I'm Kate. I went to Worcester Polytechnic Institute, graduated also 2 months ago, but feels like 80,000. Yeah. I worked on Lead the Light while I was at SIP. I love that one. It was my good little fire boy. I recently released a game on Steam called The Call of Karen, which recently passed 20,000 downloads. Woo! And I am currently unemployed, but I do contract work and other stuff around the Boston area. So yeah, that's what I do.
Okay. I'm Victoria. I was in the SIP 2018 with them. I was the producer of Vine Slider. I went to Becker College with Chloe. Currently, I am at Unity Technologies, the Framingham office in Massachusetts. I'm a QA contractor.
Right.
I have nothing else.
No, I don't think that's anything else. And for those that don't know, my name is Jacob Siegel. I'm currently enrolled at Becker College, entering my senior year. And I am currently a marketing intern at Mass Digi's Summer Innovation Program. Cool. So for those that didn't know, this stream is our three streamers will be talking about their journeys throughout their gaming things from graduation, as well as how has SIP helped them. And yeah, so if you guys want to go, I'll let you loose.
Cool. Is there anything in particular you want us to start with?
No, whichever you think is most important that you want to tell to fellow college and high school students.
All right, let's pop off.
I learned that I need to be able to talk to people that even I don't know, because that was literally the first week. No one was talking. And so I kind of just developed the skill slowly, like throughout the rest of college and SIP, but just talking to people I don't know, like getting into the hang of like starting a conversation, not asking questions, prompting them to ask questions, stuff like that. Which then helps my personality and my skills as a producer, because you need to be able to communicate very clearly and very openly with the team to make sure that everyone knows what they're doing and they're on the same page.
Yeah, I could probably hop off that and say like a lot of with SIP, I mean, it kind of, SIP really helped to define like how important communication is when you're working on a game development team. Communication is like the key to game development. You have to constantly talk to people from disciplines that aren't necessarily your own. So like I was an associate producer and artist during SIP, but I also was talking to the programmers and the designer on our team, trying to figure out how everything could work together. And that is consistently something that I run into every single day at any job that I've had since then. It's just constant talking to people who might not have the same skill set as you. It also, SIP showed me that I also really enjoy production, because I was not expecting to be in a production position, but then it was like, surprise, you're in a production position now, and I really, really enjoyed it. So yeah, that was cool.
I relate to that. I was told I was a producer the day we started teams. I was like, great. Woohoo.
Amazing.
Never been a producer before, and it's like, surprise.
Yeah, talking to people was definitely a big thing for me, because I had made a lot of games before SIP, but I made them pretty much entirely on my own, because I'm a nightmare jack of all trades. And so it was a completely new experience, having teammates and both like trusting them to do their thing, which all my teammates are great. So, I could trust them to get their stuff done, and it was completely different. It was way easier, first of all, so much easier to have people doing, the things they're good at, instead of having, just one person who prefers art but can program doing all that stuff. Also, one of the things that SIP was really good for, that I would say, and I think you guys get this a little bit more at Becker than we do at WPI, was thinking of games as a product, kind of, where it's like, we presumably you make video games because you love video games, right? Like everyone likes video games. But when you're just making games for yourself, which again, nothing wrong with that. Making games for yourself is an absolute blast, and it's how you learn. When you're just making games for yourself, you're just learning the tools, you're learning the skills, you're learning, you're figuring out what you're doing. But when you actually start to do research into games and start making games, thinking of a game as how can this be commercially viable? How can I sell things? How can I make money? How can I tap into different market trends? It really changes the way that you look at game development, and it really kind of opens up a whole new world to you. And that was one of the things that SIP really did for me, I would say.
Yeah, like not the like video game, like to create video games is not just like the game itself. You have to think about analytics, data, marketing, who's gonna buy it, at what price point, if you're doing it for free or for pricing and stuff like that. And well, if you do it for yourself, you never think about those things, obviously. But during like SIP, we learned that these were the games we made were going to be mobile games on the market. They were going to be free, but we need to think about what's popular, what will the icons look like, does color matter, stuff like that. Color matters very much, as Walt has said many times. But you have to sort of start taking those into account very early on, and don't do them last minute because it will end very badly. Very badly.
If it could help for anyone for context, I don't know if everyone here completely understands what like SIP is. So to kind of explain SIP, it's a program that would go on every summer. It's the summer innovation program from MassDigi, where a bunch of students from all over countries and like anywhere. We had people from all different places in our year. We had someone from Turkey, had Ireland, all different places. And all these people would come together. Our year might have been one of the larger years. I forget if they constantly hit the same size. Because we had like 32 people or something. Mm-hmm. But normally there's about like 4 teams or so. At least our year there was 4 teams of 6 people each. And then there was also like another team for SIP-X that kind of worked on some other stuff. But specifically talking for the SIP teams, we would be broken up pretty early on. It's like a 12-week. Was it 12 weeks or was it?
12 weeks.
Yeah, 12-week program where we kind of were broken up into these 4 teams. And there are some people of every discipline on each team. Some people did multiple things. So like, for instance, like I was associate producer and also an artist. And like Victoria was, like a producer, but she could also program. But for the most part, I think at that point you started doing mostly production.
My team had 5 programmers and 1 artist. There really didn't need to be that many programmers.
There was an odd mix on that team. But like, for instance, like the Spell Strike team, there were 2 artists, like 3 or 4 people that could program. Because our designer could also program. So like, it was kind of like a lot of programmers, like 2 artists, which worked out great because we had 2 artists. Victoria's team only had 1 artist.
Rip Tristan.
He did a great job.
He did do a great job.
Yeah, so that's pretty much SIP. You go from pre-production into like a production phase, getting the games from just initial concept into an actual playable product. There was a bunch of things that would go on during it, play tests where you'd have local like school students come in and they would test the games out and you'd take the feedback from there and see what you could do to improve the games. And it was a really, really cool experience. So if that helps gives any context for anyone.
Yeah. I'm kind of piggybacking a little bit onto like making playable prototypes and doing that whole thing. Another thing that SIP did that I was really good was the fact that all the games we made got released eventually on the App Store, because if you've released a game, like if you've made a game and put it out there somewhere for people to see, it doesn't necessarily have to be like the App Store or Google Play or Steam or whatever, even though that's like, you know, generally the most well-known ones. You can also put it on Itch. Itch is a real itch.io, which is a really great site that's kind of like a Steam, but not really curated at all, but you can just slap whatever you want on there and people can see it and play it, and it's great. Having released something that other people can play and see and is complete enough where people can do that is a really big advantage for in my opinion, for when you're looking for jobs or internships or anything, because you can talk about how, you know, you brought this thing from start to finish, or start to almost finish, because for SIP we generally didn't actually finish them. We passed them off to Becker people to finish them.
Yeah.
But being able to talk about the whole process and like also showing that you do have the drive and dedication to finish a product, like I don't know, I felt like that was really useful to me when I was I did SIP when I was a sophomore in college, so I got I had one more year, and then I got an internship and then graduated. But during like the interview for that internship, it was super helpful to be able to talk about that.
Yeah, not only that, if you have a project or a product that interviewer can play, that's a big plus, because then they don't have to be like, you don't have to give them something through like an email. They can like look up online and just get it, and on their own time they can try it. So it's like super helpful.
All right. I actually have two questions here. So whoever can answer it, feel free to answer it. So would you suggest that someone in high school look to concentrate more on one area, such as programming, production, design, or be a jack of all trades, going everywhere?
I guess, I mean, I could start and then other
Yeah.
people could give their opinions.
Go for
but
it.
what I've seen a lot when it comes to that is, like for instance, I myself, like I'm an artist. I concentrated in art. You know, I went into game development for a concentration in art degree specifically. But then I also found out that I have the skills to also be a producer. Um, I don't necessarily think that you have to be like a jack of all trades. There's some value in really specializing in something, but understanding what the other members of your team are doing is important. So you don't necessarily have to know how to program, but understand it. Like say you're going to be an artist, it's like you don't need to know how to code, but understanding how what they're doing affects what you're doing, and like the relationship between those two things and how it could better affect the game, and being able to communicate that with each other is important. Um, at least that's what I've seen, because a lot of people that I work with currently, you know, they specialize in like one thing. They're just a designer, they're just a programmer, they're just an artist, but they do all of that stuff together and to make a product. So as long as you understand how what you're doing affects what they're doing, I think that's fine.
For Becker College, when you're a freshman, you can start off as just a game design general major, and you can like through the electives, you can kind of explore what you want, like the art, design, programming and stuff, like the intro courses, and you can pick from there. In my experience though, is that I started out as programming and I fell into production as well. And you kind of learn the skills as you go. So if you really want to focus on something, you can, and you can always learn new skills later on. For job wise, some jobs might want someone who's very dedicated in something specific, but with knowledge of something of like art in the sense. You might want to be super focused in VFX, but you also know other art, like traditional art, different media, stuff like that. So you should have, I think you should have skills, some like very maybe minimal skills in everything. You know how to like make a level in Unity or something like that, but could also be very focused in something else.
Yeah, as someone who is a nightmare jack of all trades, as I mentioned, the reason I say nightmare jack of all trades isn't necessarily because being a jack of all trades is bad. It's because I have personally faced the struggle where, because I do a lot of things, like I'm an artist, like generally 3D artist, but I can also rig characters and program, and I do design, and I also do production. Like sometimes you can fall into this trap of, because you are like, you can do a lot of things, people will think that like either like you lack discipline or you haven't like you don't actually know what to focus on. But knowing that, I would say if you are in high school and you're just starting out and you're trying to figure it out, I would say explore whatever you want. Like figure out what you want to do. There are almost no skills in game development that if you learn them like early on or just like figure it out. If you learn how to program and you decide, hey, I want to be an artist later, that's still going to be helpful to you because you'll be able to communicate with programmers on your team. So if you're just figuring out what you want to do, I would definitely recommend doing a lot of exploration. And if you do find yourself liking more than one thing, there are like some disciplines that overlap a bit more. So for example, there are a lot of designers out there, like a ton of designers, ton of people who want to be designers. But if you're a designer who can program, or if you're like a level designer who can also do environmental art, like there's like some overlap there that can really help you out. Also worth noting is it kind of depends on what sort of company you're more interested in. So big companies like AAA companies like Blizzard, Rockstar, Bungie, they generally prefer, from what I've heard, they generally prefer to have people who are more specialized, because if you have a company of about 300 people, then you really do just want the one person who's great at making like very specific fire particle effects or, something like that. But if you're at an indie company, and I worked at Firehose Games in Boston, and that company at the time that I worked there was 11 people. And they hired me to do quality assurance and sound design, which like, as I mentioned, I like also do 3D art and also do design, also whatever, like they hired me for those two things. But then they kept me on for longer than they had planned because I was useful at doing all these other little things too. Because if you're at an indie company, then why are you going to hire someone to do very specific fire particle effects when you can have someone do a pretty all right fire particle effect, but they can also model all of your characters? Those are things to consider. But again, if you're high school, you're just starting out, explore what you like, and exploring different things will eventually lead you, I think, to figure out what you actually want to do.
Yeah, and don't force yourself to like something just because it might have a higher pay raise.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
There are some people
you
who
will
do
suffer.
that.
Yes, but if they end up enjoying it, but don't just think about the money because you won't enjoy it then.
Yep. So quickly, you have a question. Do the three of you in SIP, I would assume this pertains to, have any favorite team bonding memory? Then after that, Chloe, if you could lead us on what your journey was, if there was any big events or big milestones that you reached in your journey to get to where you are now.
All right.
So start with the
I'll start with the team bonding.
We had a lot of good ones.
Oh,
There's
so
a
many.
lot of good ones.
Yeah.
One of my personal favorites, because every single time I see anything relating to it, I always get very excited. Forged in Fire is a TV show on the History Channel. And it's about making like weaponry. Like these like blacksmiths make weaponry. And it became a running gag throughout the entire summer of just quenching and like, what is it? Is it quenching?
Quenching is when you dip.
Quench.
Yeah, it's when you dip like a super hot
thing
metal in oil and water, I think.
Yeah. And then
like harden it.
I think there was some other joke related to the show too, but quenching was the major
It
one.
will kill.
Oh, it will kill, yeah.
That's when they tested the durability and strength of the weapon.
And if it cuts through whatever it has to cut through, the guy's just like, he's like, it will kill. And he just says it in such like a weird way.
So good. And he gives you the look. Like, he's like,
So we marathoned that one. That was like night one. It just came on the TV that was like in the living space. So everyone was just like, yep, I guess we're watching this now. And we all just bonded. Like our first interaction with everyone was literally just over this TV show and laughing at like how crazy it was and like freaking out when someone's like weapon broke. And we were like, oh no, poor Ginny, his weapon broke. Like,
and we found out one of our friends from Ireland actually had some skills in blacksmithing, which was really cool.
And we really thought about doing a blacksmithing class.
But they're really expensive.
They were too expensive, but we thought about it.
Oh, I forgot about that.
It's so good.
Whenever I see anything, because SIP takes place normally, this summer it's remote, but normally it takes place in Worcester. And like every like fall, there was, is it Start on the Street? It's like Start on the Street, I think. and it's like this kind of like thing where you walk up and down, and like there's all vendors and stuff on the road, and there's performers and everything. And it's really, really cool. But there always were like blacksmiths there, just like showing off cool stuff and like blacksmithing in front of people, and I'd always see it and be like, quench, like because of SIP. It was just always a good reference.
There was that. There was some Avatar: The Last Airbender marathons happening. There was Chloe's started a Hunger Games marathon that lasted like all day.
That did happen. That was a good marathon.
There were
Blimbor.
Blimbor
was a character made by my artist, Tristan. We had a whiteboard wall behind us, so Tristan would start drawing on it randomly, and so Blimbor became the mascot. I don't have a picture of Blimbor, unfortunately, but he was just like this thing that only had a nose, or no, he didn't have a nose. He had a mouth that would. The only noise he would make was a bottle cap sound, like when you blow into when you blow into like a bottle, it makes like the whistling sound. That was like it, or I don't know.
And Blimbor evolved into not only our mascot, but into Trumbus, which is a god for WPI students.
Yeah, Blimbor has a cousin now. That's how popular he got.
And there was Slaunching, which is like
Slaunching and Gunching.
Conditioning that I don't know what happened. So we have a lot of like internal memes,
but
jokes.
Slaunching expanded past our year.
Yeah,
and has infected every year
too.
past us so far. It first started as a way to exude power, but now just as a greeting, where you just stand awkwardly whenever you see a SIP person, and they understand what you're doing.
Usually.
Very good. All right, now I think, Chloe, you're supposed to talk about your mystical game development journey.
Yes.
My magical journey in game development. Oh God, where to begin? So pretty much, I guess if I start as early as I can, I really enjoyed games growing up. They were something that I was really like. That was like, out of all my hobbies, I liked like playing games. I liked reading books, stuff like that. Real cool stuff. So I grew up playing a lot of games. I would play them with like my dad sometimes. Like we would play Street Fighter, and like I wouldn't know what I was doing, and he wouldn't know what he was doing, but we'd have a lot of fun, like pressing the same button over and over in a fighting game and hoping something would happen. And I ended up playing a lot of games growing up. Started with like, my first console was like a Sega Genesis that we had like Sonic on. And that was like one of the first games I remember playing. And then I would get Nintendo DS from my grandma, and man, Nintendogs is a good game. And it just evolved from there into me then begging after a couple of years to get an Xbox 360 for my birthday. And when I got that and I loaded up Halo 3 for the first time, that was like a really cool moment, and I still remember that. It's like ingrained in my memory. And it was just playing games like that, and all the different types of games, and just seeing how the worlds were built, that I always thought that it'd be really cool to work in games and work on games, but I always kind of thought it was like totally not going to happen. That's totally like a far-fetched dream thing. So like I went through high school, and I ended up looking at a couple of programs, all different things, and ended up at Becker's program because I really liked how hands-on it could be, and like how they have these studio elements where you're working on actual games with people and you can show those off. That was something that I valued because I knew I liked to learn through doing stuff hands-on. And I originally applied to be a designer because I wasn't sure if I wanted to program or do art or design or whatever. And then I realized I did want to do art when I was at like a Becker like new student event. So I went and immediately swapped over to art because it just started. It was like the first year that they had the art concentration. Went through college, and pretty much, one, realized I really liked art, specifically 3D art, and two, was super shy and unconfident in my abilities until about SIP happened, where Mati consistently yelled at me to stop being not confident in my abilities. So that pretty much, like, I got into live studio early, which is a thing that Massagey also assists with. I got in there as a freshman, went through 3 semesters of that, and then in my summer going to junior year, did SIP, had a great time, learned a lot about game development and the whole process. From there, like, started to do a lot of leadership related things at Becker, when it came to like, I mean, I was always a part of the International Game Developers Association. I was always on the e-board and assisted at events there, which was a super cool club to be a part of. And then I went on to work with Victoria, kind of late junior year into senior year, on creating Women in Games at Becker, which was a club that basically managed to get more mentors and speakers to Becker to talk about their experiences in game development and help students understand more about the game development industry. And like, if they had questions, they had these people now that they consistently could reach out to and say like, hey, so-and-so, I'm really confused about this. Could you give me some guidance? And like, they would reach out to them, and it was a really, really cool thing. And we ended up running a lot of cool events, like a portfolio review that had like 50 people show up, and all these other crazy events that we had a bunch planned, but that couldn't go and happen because of last semester was a little bit crazy and remote. So then I graduated. During this time, I was an intern at Petrichor, which is based on Becker campus as of right now, or at least based in Worcester. And they're working on a game, Dogfight. So I interned with them and did environment art on Dogfight, and really solidified the fact that I enjoyed doing environment art and working in that environment. It was really, really great experience. And from that, I ended up, once graduating, getting a few contracts, working, like doing VFX on some mobile games, and now currently working with Truly Social Games Vancouver on Archer Danger Phone, doing some environment art and character related stuff, which is pretty fun. I guess that's a very speedrunny experience through my gaming magical journey. I'm gonna pick next. Kate, it's you now.
Oh, I think Jacob has some questions for us.
Oh no,
first,
questions!
We tried.
I wanted to throw it at someone else.
Oh,
Don't worry, you'll
It's
hear
gonna be
from-
Kate now after these questions.
Saving the best for last, it seems.
Yeah, we got Victoria's crazy journey.
Uh,
But what be thou questions, Jacob?
I think you might be muted or something.
yeah, we can't hear you.
You might have bumped the button.
Thank you. Yes, I clicked the button on my microphone. Whoops. Where was I? So how did you know when to release a game? Because it can always get better, but at some point your group starts losing interest. So I would assume that is going with like social media kind of stuff. If you're pushing out a game, is there too point of a early? Because eventually when you lose people, that was a weird phrase.
Burnout is a thing. I felt that when I was working on Line Slider. So I was a producer for Line Slider during SIP 18, and I worked on it for 5 semesters basically. And semesters 3, I was super burnt out about it because I was kind of lost on where to bring the game, because it's a level-based game, and designing levels is very hard. Balancing levels is very hard. We didn't have a designer that time. We had artists and programmers. So what had ended up happening is that we kind of halfway through, we're realizing we're not making progress. So we started making a plan on what needed to happen for us to progress next semester. So you kind of have to decide what you need to happen versus like what you like. I don't know how to put it in the sense of like, I figured out what the game needed in order for us to continue forward. Like, and you also have to be very motivated to do it, because yes, we were supposed to launch anyway, but I don't know, seeing something launch on an app store is like super fulfilling. So, and there's never always a right time to launch. Usually you have a plan that you follow, a goal, and usually you have multiple goals for that goal. And if you miss it, it happens, but you just have to make sure to plan and rethink and reprioritize during these times, and you should be able to figure something out.
Yeah, that's like pretty much it. Like when it comes to like, there's no necessarily like perfect time to launch a game. It's more so when you're developing that game, looking ahead and trying to think of where that game could be at X point in time, and creating that plan to say, okay, we want to launch it for this time period because you've done research into marketing stuff and realize, okay, this is the best time to launch games, because there is data on that. And then like if that's where your goal date is, breaking that down into a plan and saying, okay, this is how we're going to hit that. And like, this is what needs to happen for us to hit that. And like Victoria said, breaking the massive goal into smaller goals, and then those smaller goals into more reachable goals. And it's pretty much how to do it is just working on all those goals until you can reach the smaller goals, and then you can finish all the smaller goals and then you meet the massive goal. And those smaller goals will help motivate teams too, because like when you see the smaller things get completed, that's always a fun time.
Yeah, like set a ding dang deadline and then do your best to stick with it. Sometimes they have to move, like it just happens. But if you have a set end date in mind, that can both help people avoid getting burnout, because there's like a finish in sight, and also that can really help you just like stay motivated, stay like just keep working on it, because you know that you've got to get it done by this point. And if you have to push it back because of some feature, because of whatever, that's fine. But if you're going to push it back, make sure to try and push it back to another specific date, because having a specific date, or even if it's not a specific date, like a rough timeline. So when we were releasing the Call of Karen, our initial plan was we wanted to release in late spring. That was our thing. We were late spring. As we got closer, we realized we were probably going to have to push into a little bit into early summer. But once we started to get to mid to a little bit early late spring, we realized we really needed to set a deadline. And then we set that deadline, and guess what happened? The Steam Summer Sale happened. And if there's one thing you don't want to do, it's release a Steam game during the Steam Summer Sale, because everyone's looking for deals. They're not looking to buy any of like your new stuff that's not hideously deeply discounted. And ours was a free game, so it wasn't quite as much of a big deal, but we still didn't want to have to deal with all of that competition. We wanted to give ourselves the best chances possible. So it's frustrating because we had our deadline, but then, we had to push it back by 2 weeks, because we wanted to wait until at least a week after the Steam Summer Sale ended, so people could have like a chance to recover and be like, okay, I guess I'm going to look for more games now. But that ended up being, at least in, we will never know what it would have actually been like if we had released then. But waiting for that time to strike really made it was the best choice for us. And even though we still have, there's still stuff we have to fix, there's still some bugs, and we're putting in subtitles now, because we have a lot of voiceover in our game. But even though there's still that stuff to do, that's what patches are for. So yeah.
Always do your research. It'll help.
So Kate, quickly take us on your magic journey.
Okay, speed run. Yes. So when I was in high school, I had the realization that I think most people have, which is, oh wow, people make games and they get paid for them. Wow. So I decided that I wanted to go to college for making games. I went to WPI, Worcester Polytechnic Institute. I checked out a bunch of other places, including Becker, but WPI just seemed like it was going to be the best fit for me. And so I went, and the moment that I got to WPI, I immediately started just ravenously trying to do every single game dev related thing like on planet Earth. So we had our game development club, which is now changed to IGDA WPI. Our game development club, and like I took all the classes, and I went to a bunch of game jams, which game jams are when you have like a limited period of time, usually around 48 hours to make a whole game. I went to a bunch of those, and I just started trying to learn everything. So I learned how to do 2D art. I learned how to do 3D art. I learned how to program. I cornered a senior and made him teach me Unity for a 24-hour game jam. Thank you, Vince. And I just started doing all of that. And as I was making games and as I was learning stuff, people started paying attention to that I was doing it. Which was also really cool, because it kind of I am a sucker for attention, so that is some sweet positive reinforcement. I became the president of the game development club, and then I also got elected to be this representative for basically whenever the faculty had the game development faculty had meetings. I came and was like, hey, the students want this, so I was a representative for that. And then in between the summer of my sophomore and junior year, I got into SIP, which SIP is kind of a big deal at WPI, as I assume it is at Becker as well. Like everyone knows about it, everyone wants it, and WPI usually only gets 1 or 2 people in per year. So I was so stoked, and I went to SIP, and obviously learned all the stuff I talked about. It was great. And then the year after, I started developing a game with 2 other friends, one of them who was also in SIP our year, Leo Banye, and we started making a game together using the principles that I had gotten from SIP. And I'd never done an independent, really long-term project before then. So that was exciting. And then after a year of working on that, passing off the presidency to another dude, and just trying to wind down a little bit because I was approaching burnout. I got an internship at Firehose Games in Boston. That was super helpful because SIP was amazing, but it was also just really great to have that opportunity to work at a real established company, because SIP is kind of like its own little microcosm of things. So it was really great to work at that established company and learn things and get to live in the Boston area and do stuff. And then this past year, I worked on my game, The Call of Karen, which is a game about a 1950s suburban housewife whose home is being invaded by Cthulhu. I released earlier this year I released it during PAX, so it was somewhere in mid-March, I think, or early March. No, it was late February.
Late February.
February this year, yeah, Christ. It was late February. I released that game I had been working on with Leo Banye and another friend on Steam, and that was my first game on Steam. And then I took what I learned from that to put into releasing The Call of Karen, which was decidedly more successful and polished, even though I still really like that other game. And through talking to people in the greater Boston area and working at Firehose and going to networking events and doing all this stuff, I managed to pick up some contract work here and there. So Firehose hired me back to do some extra contract work. I did some work for Deja Bond Games in Boston, did some QA for them, did some art for a startup called Total Respawn AR. Did a lot of stuff poking around the greater Boston area, and that has led me to where I am today, which, while I am unemployed, I am fairly confident that at some point I will get a job. It takes a while. That's the thing they don't tell you, is that when you graduate, it can take you a while. There's someone I was talking, this is the last thing, I promise I make it quick, Jacob. The thing they don't tell you is that it can take a while to get a job. You will get one, if you keep at it and you work hard and you keep on improving yourself, you can do it, but it will sometimes take a while. I was talking to someone who works at Obsidian Obsidian, New Vegas, which is New Vegas, Outer Worlds, all that stuff. Big name company and a cool company. But I was talking to someone who worked there, and she was like, yeah, it took me 70, 90 job applications to get to where I was, but now she works at hacking Obsidian. That's awesome. So it'll take you a while, but or maybe it won't, but I mean, granted, we're in a pandemic right now, but yeah, it takes a while, but you can do it if you work hard and do the things. All right, that's my speed run.
Nice. That's a great speed run record. We'll add it to the book. So Kate, do you want to get that the question that just came in?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So jobs coming through contract and QA work, that I was actually all indie companies, weirdly enough. You can get contracts with bigger companies, but as I could be wrong, but bigger companies, it does, I think, tend to be through connections and stuff. And these were one of these I applied through for the contract work. I applied for it cold, and I got it. But the other one through Firehose, it was because I'd worked with them, and that's an indie company and 11 people. And Deja Bond Games is weird. I really don't know how many full-time employees there are. I think it's just one dude and a bunch of rotating contractors and part-time people, which is pretty wild. And that one I got that one because he posted the job listing and I applied, and he reached out to my old boss at Firehose, and apparently he was like, yeah, she's good. And I was like, oh, all right. So it really is helpful I know it's kind of hard to network right now, but I cannot emphasize how helpful it is to talk to people and know people. So yeah, for me, it was indie companies, but I know that's not always the case with people. But it was indie companies because I knew more people in the indie sphere.
Nice.
I did have that answers.
Awesome. Thank you, Kate, for sharing. Oh,
Depends on the company, salary, hourly, or whatever. Like my QA contract right now is hourly. I know a couple other Becker students are also hourly, but they work full-time, whereas I'm part-time. So it just depends on the company and your contract, honestly.
Yeah, I think mine were all hourly. It really depends.
Some might just have a set pay for like you work for 3 months, you get a certain amount of money.
all right, Victoria, you're up.
Oh,
Take us on your
lovely.
journey.
Okay. I started playing games when I was really young, N64 stuff, because all of my cousins are male except for 2. I have 13. So we bonded over games. Oh, sorry, there's a fly. So in high school, I was a graphics design major, and that's what I thought I was going to do. Oh my God, stupid fly. Sorry. Ugh. Anyway, so I was a graphic design major, and I didn't know if going into games was a thing. But I saw Becker College had a major. Actually, my mom found it from their brochure, and she knew I really wanted to go into games. So I applied, and I chose to go there. And from there, I started. My major is a Bachelor of Arts in Interactive Media Programming. I programmed for about 2 years, taking like art and design classes here and there, and it was fun. I got in one of the game studios I was part of. It was Puzzle Hamster VR. So you're a hamster in a hamster ball, escaping your cage, and it was really cool. I got to go to Boston Fig, which is a Boston Festival of Indie Games. It's like a very small convention type thing. I showcased there. I showcased at PAX East 2018, and that's where I kind of started getting my people talking skills. And I applied to SIP, thinking I wasn't going to get it, but always try to always apply. You never know. And I got in. And so from there, I was put as a producer on a team of programmers and one artist. And we made Line Slider, which is a platformer game where you're drawing platforms. And it was fun. And so I stuck with that game for a while, and I started gaining my production skills, and I loved it. From there, I was part of Live Studio during my junior year, and I continued to work on Line Slider. Senior year, I was part of Line Slider again, and then my boss gave me 6 other mobile games to deal with, and I worked on Beat the Machine with Jacob, which Beat the Machine launched on Steam this month, so I have 2 games under my belt published. And then I graduated, and I applied for Unity in Framingham, QA contract, and I got it. So I'm working there for a couple months, and that's my story.
Speediest speed run.
Yeah, speedy speed runs.
Love it.
Thank you.
Oh, that was faster than I expected with that speed run.
I mean, you told me to do speedy, so.
Yeah, no, that was amazing. So very quickly, so what we're gonna have is the rest of the time will be QA. The people will answer questions and
Quality
so on and so
assurance.
forth.
I was gonna say it.
What happened?
Quality assurance.
Oh, quality
QA.
QA.
Victoria, get ready.
So
Okay.
I'm going to post in the chat a feedback form. So before people go, please fill it out. I will really appreciate it so we can help make these better in the future. As well as if you have any messages to our streamers. We're going to leave the remainder time to QA stuff. Yeah. So cool. I have a question here for you. Where'd it go?
It's hidden.
No, what was it? Yeah. What sort of skills are needed or in demand right now for incoming programmers in the field?
In the field, like
field.
professionally?
Professional.
you should know C++. Honestly, that's like a really big thing.
That's going to be the first thing I was going to say, so I'm glad you said it.
Like I'm helping my friends look for jobs too, just because in case of like other companies I'm looking at, and almost all of them say like have some knowledge of C++. They might not be coding in C++, they might be coding in C or C sharp, but if you have the knowledge of C++, that'll really help. Um, that's like the biggest thing I can think of, I'm gonna be honest. Working maybe
Yeah,
in architecture systems or something, AI, I don't know.
it also kind of depends on the like company you're applying to as well. So for example, Proletariat in Boston, they're doing Spellbreak, which is like an online battle royale where you use
Magic.
magic. And I remember hearing that they wanted like people who knew REST APIs, and
Yeah.
but if you're going to work at some place that doesn't do any online multiplayer, then you probably don't need to know it as much. I would highly recommend if you are gunning for a specific company, or if you're just looking in general, try to find like some job postings for jobs that you like that are roughly entry level that you would like to have, and then see what those ask for. That will probably be the most helpful thing, because then you can get it straight from the horse's mouth.
Unreal is really popular right now, actually. Programming in Unreal.
Knowing engines in general.
Yes.
If you want to work in games, understand different engines. Like just plop around in Unity and Unreal. Knowing that is pretty important. If you just have programming background, they will like the fact that you've used an engine in a entry level position.
All right. Victoria, this is for you. Is that a disguised toast flushed in the background?
Yes, it is disguised toast. I got it for my birthday from my boyfriend.
Amazing.
Yeah. How to deal with burnout? How to deal with burnout?
Take a break, honestly. Like for Linesider, it was like a semester project, so I couldn't really take a break. But I told my boss I was feeling burnout, and it was during school, so I told him, and he said I could just take maybe a day or two off and like not think about it as much. Also know your limits and prepare yourself for it, because sometimes during the year I feel shitty during certain times of the year for personal reasons, and that's when burnout hits the most for me. Um, so I just hang out with friends. I play my own games. I literally just don't think about it for a couple of days. And it usually helps me in the sense of I have a fresh mind to go back to it. So I might see something that I could work on.
Yeah, I am personally very, very bad about burnout. I teeter very close to the edge of burnout fairly often. But I highly recommend doing just what Victoria said, where you take like a couple of days and you're like, I am not gonna touch this. I'm not gonna think about it. I'm not gonna do nothing. I'm just gonna like, I don't know, marathon Avatar: The Last Airbender on Netflix. And it's super helpful. I would also recommend, if you find yourself teetering close to burnout very often, something that has been very helpful to me is designating certain times and also certain places that you do work. So if you do all of your work at the same, like if you, for example, right now, I am in my childhood bedroom and I do all of my stuff from this recliner. Normally, if I'm watching TV, I'm watching on this recliner. If I'm like doing work, I'm doing it on here. I normally would not recommend doing that. When I was at WPI and when you could, go places and do things, I would, try and do my work or like do my relaxing in the living room, and then I would like go on campus to do my work. And that separation of like the place where you rest and the place where you work can be really helpful, especially if you set like a schedule for like how long you're going to work or when you can do that. That can be really hard when you're a college or high school student, because you don't always have as much control over your schedule as you'd like, or like the time you're working can be really nebulous. But if you can get that separation, then you can kind of train your brain into relaxing when you're supposed to relax. And you can't really go out right now, but it's something as easy as like, maybe you relax in your room, but you go like to like the kitchen table, like to do work or something like that.
Um, I don't see any more questions. So really quickly to everyone, if you wish to sign up for the next stream, that will be featuring Ryan Canal, who is the CEO and co-founder of Petrichor.
That
Check to
guy's
make
cool.
sure you. Yeah,
He's a
he is
really
a
cool
really
dude.
He's really
He's a-
cool.
he signed up on our website. Other than that, I don't have much more. So I'm going to end the recording. And I'll allow everyone, if they wish, to unmute themselves. And you guys can talk until you're ready to go.
Just vibe.
Yeah, totally.
Kind of a vibe check at this point. So
Gotta get my vibe stimulus check in the mail.